The era of HD 2D RPGs has been such a fun ride for me, but one that's managed to fly completely under the radar, all while embracing many creative themes and innovations, is Wandering Sword. Wandering Sword is a classic turn-based RPG created by indie developer The Swordman Studio, and it's published by Spiral Up Games. This title is officially released today on Steam, and it's created in the wuxia style, which basically means it's a Chinese-inspired fantasy tale that emphasizes martial arts. It's set in a fictional world, but everything about this game is inspired by ancient Chinese history, from the setting, to the character names, to the weapons and equipment, and beyond. But there's so many other facets of the game I want to tell you about. In this video, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to tell you everything I like, everything I dislike, and whether I recommend Wandering Sword to fans of my channel and the games that I cover on it. In full disclosure, I was given an advanced copy of this game by the publisher, but I wasn't paid to make this video, so all these thoughts are my own. Before I get into everything about Wandering Sword though, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more retro gaming and classic RPG content. Wandering Sword takes place at the end of the fictional Ning Dynasty, where outlaws in a group called the Tianlong Gang have allied with foreigners to terrorize the people of the Central Plains. This area is populated with many clans and sects, some of which feud with each other. As the main character Yuan Yi, you are tasked with the duty of delivering a mysterious man to the Valley of Dragon's Slumber, along with several friends. The mission is soon derailed though when a fight breaks out with members of the Tianlong Gang. After a trap, the man inside the carriage turns out to be an experienced fighter and leader of the Wudong sect. His name is Qing Shu, and he defeats the Tianlong Gang, but Yuan Yi gets hit by a poisonous arrow, and Chen Wu blows up the area with dynamite. Yuan Yi is delivered to an old friend of Master Qing Shu named Zhang Yinfeng, who reluctantly agrees to take him in and cure him. As he suffers from the effects of the poison, he learns that all of his friends have died in the catastrophe. Soon afterwards, he suffers yet another tragedy, but the event gives him purpose, and from there, you're able to explore almost all of the world right away, which makes this RPG a lot different from most others. Also, Wandering Sword is filled with quests, some of which are similar to what you might find in some MMOs. Some of these form the basis of the main storyline, but lots of others are totally optional that give you various rewards. You can get special equipment, food to replenish your health, and even recruitable characters as part of these quests. And the last one of those in particular is extremely important. In fact, Wandering Sword can be incredibly challenging if you don't recruit these characters, all of which require you to raise your affinity with them by giving them items. For instance, in the starting village, I was able to recruit Wei Huo after giving him various foods, and Bai Jin by completing a few steps and following him around the world until he eventually gave in and joined my party. At that point, we became a 3-member wolf pack, which you may say could qualify as the 3 best friends that anybody could have. In all seriousness though, I can't express how important this was because groups of enemies were so much easier to defeat from that point forward. Even if you have all of your skills maxed, you can easily get surrounded and pummeled if you aren't recruiting these characters. And speaking of skills, those are gained through tomes you find throughout the adventure and leveled up with martial points you get at the end of each battle. Most of them are weapon specific too, so Yuan Yi is the only one that can use virtually all of them. You don't gain levels in the traditional fashion either, so martial points and another mechanic called the Meridian system mostly take their place. The latter is a pathway of interconnected nodes that you can spend points on to acquire stat boosts and special abilities. This kind of reminded me of the sphere grid system from Final Fantasy X, and it worked in tandem with the abilities upgrades to give me something to think about and plan around. For most of the characters, I prioritized defensive nodes right away, and I think I made the right call with that because they seem to be by far the most powerful at the start. What's so crazy about Wandering Sword, and really stands out about it, is the fact that there aren't even very many dungeons. 8 hours into the game and there's only really 2 of them, so most of this game's action and storyline sequences actually take place from within villages and other areas. Some RPG fans might find this to be a little weird, but I actually found it to be oddly refreshing. Some of the dialogue was long and a bit overbearing, but it was mostly enjoyable to take in. There's a lot of humor used too, which may actually throw you off. For instance, I don't exactly think the word dumbass was used too frequently in ancient China. But I mean, hey, it'll definitely make you laugh, and I guess having that stuff in the game is all part of the fun. It has its own certain charm. Combat takes place on a tiled 2D grid, where each character can move a set number of squares and execute one action per turn. You can choose between real-time or turn-based mode. So yeah, at the risk of being called a boomer, I chose the latter because that's the style I prefer. In addition to a normal attack, each character has several martial arts techniques that need to be activated through a menu to be used in battle. The battles rely on a really innovative cooldown system where if you use a special ability, you can't use it again for a certain number of turns. This made me stop to think about when it was best to use these, so I could maximize my damage against multiple enemies if I could, and conserve my magic points if I couldn't. All of your techniques are based upon weapon types, so there's swords, sabers, polearms, and hidden weapons, which appear to me to be gloves. Also, many of the gear pieces provide things like hit point bonuses, so you do progress that way as well. I guess you could say the world of Wandering Sword is your martial arts oyster. The game's inventory management reminds me a lot more of the Diablo games than it does typical RPGs, as all items have a graphical icon. New weapons and armor can easily be equipped by double-clicking on them, and I found it extremely easy to manage. There's even a convenient hover-over effect that shows you the stats and effects of everything, and I never had space issues. If you aren't constantly equipping the new weapons and armor you find though, you can really get outmatched by the enemies. Thankfully, the development team made a lot of improvements to this game from feedback received during the demo, including making the text larger and more legible, correcting some sound and translation bugs, and even adding controller support. I tried to set up my own controller to play the game that way, but honestly, it was cumbersome because there are many different button combinations, and I found that the game is a lot more enjoyable with the mouse and keyboard. Just like many of Wandering Sword's other qualities, its soundtrack is also really distinct. It uses classical Chinese strings and woodwinds, and I promise it will sound unlike any other RPG you've ever played before because of it. And the quality is really high too. The village songs are relaxing, the battle song is fun and upbeat, and it's just great to sit back and take it all in. They really did a good job with this. My only critique of the score is that there just aren't enough tracks here. And don't get me wrong, the songs themselves are fantastic, but you'll be hearing the same ones over and over throughout the game. There only seems to be about 10 that I've found. It would have been really nice if they would have created a unique track for bosses, for instance, and they could have expanded it in some other ways too. And now for my other honest critiques, so here we go. Other than Yu and Yi, there isn't much character development to be seen, and the game's story can be a little hard to follow at times. I also think that the game's difficulty is tuned a bit too high, and I shared this feedback with the publisher. So there are times that you'll get killed in 2 or 3 hits even with max skills, and you'll get completely blown away if you don't recruit any optional characters. Like I said, I shared this perception with the publisher, so maybe they'll consider tweaking it a bit in a patch. Taken as a whole though, Wandering Sword is a really solid retro RPG that's flying totally under the radar. It combines a unique story, breathtaking graphics and sound, fun advancement mechanics, and a really involved combat system together into a single game, and I really did have a blast playing through it. It'll give you a solid 20 hours of classic RPG greatness, and there's lots of extra content to keep you busy as well. I really hope more people start to talk about and play this game, because I think it's definitely worth it for fans of retro gaming and RPGs in general. If you like games like Sea of Stars, Chained Echoes, and the Octopath Traveler games, I think you'll dig this one as well. It's definitely not a cookie-cutter RPG, and that's a good thing. But what do you think about Wandering Sword? Does this look like an RPG you'd play? If you've given it a try, let me know your thoughts on it in a comment below. please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more retro gaming content. I also want to give a big shout out to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members. If you want early access to the videos I produce and other perks like they receive, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon patron or via the YouTube Join feature.